Hello, everyone. Today is May 28th, 2014. Welcome to episode 11 of the Techcitement podcast. I'm Yoni Gross.
I'm Tanya Lufker.
Nathan, once again, is not paying attention when he's supposed to say his name. I think this is becoming a tradition. And
because Nathan's trying to join from as many devices at once as he can.
Okay, I think I'm going to have to just ignore that because that drove me crazy the last time I paid attention to it. This is, once again, the weirdest, most excited podcast in the world of tech. This evening we will be talking about the rant I've been holding on to for weeks about the FCC and net neutrality. We're going to talk about Amazon taking over the book publishing industry in slightly more frightening ways than usual. Well, I guess Google's self-driving cars being like a real thing soon. So, does anyone else want to say anything about the FCC before I start ranting?
No, I've heard bits and pieces of your rant already. I just want you to get it all out there. I don't want to take a minute away from this, so you go ahead.
Okay. My rant is actually not as bad as it was a few weeks ago because I've heard more and more information about it, but...
Yeah, plus you've blown off a lot of steam in my ear.
That is true. Over the last few years, the FCC has struggled to regulate internet service providers. Nathan, your hand is over your lens cap. I don't know how you ever expect to be on video that way. The FCC has struggled to regulate internet service providers in various ways, basically trying to ensure a concept called net neutrality. Net neutrality is the idea that no one bit is any different than any other bit, and your internet service provider can't say you can get YouTube but not Netflix, or you can browse the web but not watch video. They have to treat all traffic equally. This is very similar to a concept called common carrier, which is the rules that apply to telephone networks. Your phone company can't say, Eitan can call me but Nathan can't, or people who work for Google can call me, but people who work for Twitter can't. Airlines have the same sort of rules. These are called common carriers. And most people feel like internet service should be a common carrier. It's much more like your telephone in that you just want to get access to everything available out there than it is like cable television where there are packages and pieces of it that you can buy and not buy. You know, it should be a lot more like that common carrier service. The problem is, legally speaking, it's not. The FCC gets its authority to regulate the internet service providers from a section of the Telecommunications Act designed to let them promote broadband. And they've tried to interpret this as saying, well, to promote broadband, we can enforce net neutrality. And they keep losing in the courts. And the most recent decision by the Supreme Court was essentially telling the FCC that you don't have the authority to enforce common carrier rules unless you declare ISPs to be common carriers. You can do that. FCC, you totally have the right to call them common carriers, but until you do, you can't do this. So the FCC went back to the drawing board, drew up new rules, and came back with, we're still not calling them common carriers. And this time, because the courts had been so explicit in what the FCC really couldn't do, the new rules looked pretty terrible. There were some leaks of them before they were officially announced. They got a little better in the official announcement, maybe. But it looks like the FCC is going to be okay with the concept of internet fast lanes. Internet fast lanes means that a company like Netflix can pay your internet service provider like Comcast or Time Warner Cable to get faster access to you than someone who's not paying them something extra, which sounds like it would be great because we get access to faster stuff from companies that can pay a little extra. The problem with this concept is that we're not talking about your ISP putting in a special fast lane for whoever is paying. Netflix is the only one who seems to be paying for any of this stuff so far, but we're not talking about your ISP giving Netflix something extra. We're talking about your ISP artificially slowing down your connection for everyone except the people who pay. Because if you're paying for 10 megabits a second and they run a line to your house that can handle 10 megabits a second, the only way to give Netflix a fast lane is by slowing everyone else to something less than 10 megabits a second, calling that 10 megabits a fast lane. This is direct violation of the principles of net neutrality. It goes against everything that's built the internet to the way it is right now, and it looks like it's going to be the wave of the future. Because unless Congress acts, the FCC is clearly not going to. So, that's where we stand right now.
I don't understand why they won't call them common carriers. It makes them... Kinetically, that's what they are. They are common carriers. They do the same thing as all the other things defined as common carriers. Look, cable television is a service. They have their commodity, or rather, they have commodities like a store. They have a series of commodities they've negotiated to have. You pay them a service fee to have access to their commodities. End of story. They bring you these commodities, right? The internet is not like that. The internet, your ISP is just a highway that you use to access. It's the on-ramp you use to access the highway. It's not a store where you go to pick specific things up. Amazon is a store. Amazon can choose who they want to, services they want to have there. Your ISP, Comcast, is not.
See,
Comcast has no material.
Comcast wants to be, though. Comcast would much rather be like cable television, having you pay for specific packages.
But for them to do that, but there's too much available on the internet for them to have a package where it's ESPN and Hulu, and it's too much stuff, too much. Realistically speaking, not to mention the way the internet works is the flow of information. It's that you can't prepackage these things. It's not like TV stations. You either have a station or you don't. There's only so many stations, and you either have them on your service or not. It's not like that with
you obviously haven't looked at a cable guide lately.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, but it's not like the internet.
That's true.
There may be millions of websites, but they really only care about the 100 or so major media companies that they can get to pay them all this money.
It's true. I mean, Netflix is responsible for something like half the traffic on the internet in peak hours. So if they can get Netflix to pay, that right there is half the battle. Throw in YouTube and you're at like 2/3. It's not like there's a huge number of sites they're aiming at. We could probably list.
Right, but that means they're going to slow everybody else down, though, and that means it's bad for commerce because there can never be anybody who comes up to challenge Netflix, which creates a monopoly. What's happening now is the government is basically forcing. At some point, they're going to have to turn around and go after Netflix for being a monopoly if they do this, because that's what they'll be. By paying, they'll be doing anti-competitive behavior because they'll be stopping anybody else from competing with them because nobody else can afford to pay.
Yeah.
It's a good point. They'll be able to make the argument at least that this was forced on them by the other monopolies.
Yeah.
Worse. I would argue this is entrapment. The government is allowing a situation to be. They're in essence creating the situation that will force somebody else to break the law. Basically, this is literally entrapment.
Here's the problem:
we should sue the FCC.
We should, but we don't have any grounds to. The problem is if
They're evil.
If you follow the logic of Comcast and the other ISPs on this issue, what they're saying is that their cable television and satellite television services and Netflix and YouTube are all direct competitors. And so it doesn't matter if Netflix is the only viable source of media on the internet because it has competition. It's got cable TV as the competition.
And cable TV is such a wonderful competitive landscape.
Yes, I know. I mean, most people have a whopping one choice, plus one satellite option. I mean, that's great competition right there. That's really tons of people getting in on the game.
I have two choices, cable and over-the-air. Oh, I guess I only have one.
Well, no, you could do DirecTV. I did that for a couple of years. It was absolute torture because, what do I want when it's raining out and my 6-year-old can't go outside, but to also have my television go out because it's raining out? I mean, that sounds like a totally viable option, right?
Yeah. Well, lucky me, my complex doesn't even allow satellite dishes. So,
Not mine.
the ridiculous part, of course, of that is that rule probably came in the antiquated times when the satellite dishes were larger than me, whereas now they're about the size of one of my dishes, and if I hung one of my dishes out my window, I'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was out of that for a second. What's going on?
We were laughing at satellite as an option.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Is this? I don't. Is this a Windows 8 feature that I don't know about? But every time stupid Comcast, my local signal gets low enough, even though just the internet part of my network, my internet connection drops to whatever the low enough is, it drops me on my network altogether. Even though the rest of my network is fine.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but you're on the network with the lowest customer service rating in America.
No. Besides,
I'm on the second lowest, soon to be merged.
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah. We're all really excited about that.
No. My point is that every time the internet signal drops to a low enough level, for whatever reason, my computer drops off of my home network. My network signal is fine. My whole network is working.
Is your modem and router one piece of equipment?
Nope. I have two separate pieces.
That's just bizarre.
Okay.
I thought maybe it was a Windows 8 feature.
I don't think we're turning this show into a troubleshooting call right now. I think we're going to do that next time.
Isn't the subtitle of this show Meaningless Digressions?
I thought it was Tangents for All.
An alternate.
Oh yeah, let's go to the community, see what they think it should be called.
Okay. Eitan, stay on after the call and I'll try to fix it for you. But
I just thought it might be a Windows 8 feature, and I was just ranting about it. Anyway.
Yeah. So, reasons why this is all going on now. Option 1. The FCC is a revolving door of cable lobbyists who start off as cable lobbyists, go become FCC chairman, and then go back to being cable lobbyists. Does that strike anyone as a wonderful scenario? Because that's how it exists right now.
Yeah, I want to say I think we should make the law that once you've worked in a field in the private sector, you can't work for the public sector in the same field.
It'd be hard to pass that law because of all of the lobbyists who'd be fighting it.
Well, it also is kind of a sketchy proposition because you do want experts in a field to be regulating that field. And you're not going to become an expert by spending your entire career in the public sector regulating it. You actually do have to work in an industry to know how it works.
You know what would fix this whole problem? A corporate Congress. I've been watching a lot of Community.
Yeah, not Community.
Continuum.
Ah!
I'm looking at a diagram on Ars Technica about Washington's revolving door. The FCC chairperson from 2009 to 2011 is now CEO of Wireless Group CTIA. The chairman from 2001 to 2005 is CEO of Cable Lobby Group NCTA. And the current FCC chairman, Tom Wheeler, is former CEO of both those organizations.
Yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah.
No one even cares about how corrupt this is. It's amazing.
Apparently not. Apparently, and in particular, the president kind of promised the tech world that he would specifically not do this when he was running for office, and then hired Tom Wheeler, exactly the person we didn't want for the job. So it was a question that has angered a lot of people in the tech community.
Wait, you're telling me that somebody who ran for public office made promises and then didn't keep them when he or she entered that office?
I know, it's shocking, right?
Now,
this is a scandal.
To be fair, it was Nate Silver did a study about how much presidents lie in their campaign promises, and he found that they almost never do.
That's true. I saw that one.
They will try to do everything they promised, though they will often fail. But they very rarely make a promise and then just lie about it. So if he did lie, it's pretty extreme.
I think the last trustworthy president we've had is Teddy Roosevelt.
And that's a ton on politics. Let's be quiet.
What?
Now, the idea of FCC corruption is very compelling and kind of obvious, but there actually is another side to this story. The way the FCC could declare ISPs to be common carriers by declaring them to fall under the regulations of Title II of the Communications Act. And unfortunately, Title II was written in 1996 to regulate telephone companies that were largely monopolies. It was not really designed for the internet landscape. Yes, our last mile ISPs are monopolies, but most of the rest of the internet is not, and a huge amount of it would fall under Title II regulation if the ISPs became declared monopolies. It's a very complex structure that was not designed for the internet, and so there is good reason why you wouldn't want the internet under Title II. It could break things unintentionally just because it wasn't designed for it. It could lead to a huge amount of regulation of companies like Google and Facebook and Netflix just because they're traveling over those lines rather than providing service.
Wait, how's that? How's that?
The broad way in which Title II is written.
Yeah, but the phone carriers fall under it, and they can't control what I say on a phone call.
No, but they can control what a phone company in California does in connecting with a phone company in New York.
How they connect, you mean?
Yes, and just trust me on this. I am not familiar with the title myself. No one in this conversation is familiar with the title themselves, but telecommunications lawyers are, and people who are telecommunications lawyers are worried about the prospect of Title II being used.
We need some sort of legal person that we can go to discuss these things.
Yes, well,
Hannah.
I was going to say, in 4 years, when Hannah is actually a lawyer and not just a almost law student, we can ask her legal advice.
Yeah, but then she'll be a real lawyer and wouldn't want to socialize with the likes of us.
Right. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to listen to This Week in Law on Twit and find out whatever information I can before coming on the show, and that way I can be at least relaying expert legal opinion.
I have a guy I can ask. He's not a lawyer, knows nothing about this, but I can ask him.
I have a guy. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Hey, when somebody says I have a guy, you know it's completely trustworthy.
So at this point, my rant is less directed at the FCC and more directed at Congress. The Congress needs to stop letting the FCC tinker with this concept and just figure out new regulation on how we handle ISPs. Congress can make the ISPs common carriers also without bringing along all the baggage of Title II. They just have to do it. Now, currently the people who are proposing that the FCC use Title II are relying on a concept called forbearance, where essentially the FCC would come in, declare Title II, but pretend some of those regulations don't exist and don't apply them across the board.
That's really a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea because, first of all, change administrations and all of a sudden the FCC is applying the rules differently. And second of all, they could lose in court again. So right now my rant is Congress needs to act and the FCC needs to stop acting, go to Congress and say this is your problem, not ours, because we don't have the authority.
This is two problems that we have in America right now. Okay? And
the House and the Senate?
Yes, what's the opposite of progress? No, no, in this case, bureaucracies. I know that when a society becomes complex enough and large enough, it becomes a necessity, but let's be honest, the devil's in the details here. That's number one. Bureaucracies are a problem. Number two is that in this country, we have this habit of we make a law when we absolutely have to, and then we sit on it and keep just applying that law to new novel situations. When something comes up, we go, it's kind of like this other thing that we already have a law for, so let's apply that law. And that's a problem. The Internet is not a phone company. The Internet is not cable TV. It's its own entity. We need to create a law that applies appropriately to the situation. When something new comes up, the government has to act to make the laws correct for the situation and not kind of try to look at the situation in a special light that makes it sort of like how the laws work.
Wait a minute.
Be a little tough.
What are you talking about? This telecommunications law was written in 1996. That's very current for the Internet.
Yes, back when we were all using, what was our search engine of choice in 1996?
I was using
Netscape.
Alta Vista.
Alta Vista.
What about Netscape? I was using the search.
Netscape
There was
was
a
an
search for
Netscape
Netscape.
is a web browser, not a search engine.
Yeah, but they had a search
No.
engine built in. No.
in a
In
web portal, I guess.
1996, you were using the internet, but not understanding what it was yet. Is that what we're saying here?
Yes.
Oh, I definitely in 1996 didn't understand what it was. I was in 8th grade. I was lucky if I understood, but I vaguely remember there being a search engine in Netflix, or maybe it was just the default search engine.
Yeah, what you were doing was going to Netscape, and whatever was your homepage, you were searching there, and thinking you were searching in Netscape.
In 1996, at home, I didn't have access to internet. Only my father's computer did, so we only got to use it when we had to do research for school. And in school, we used whatever the school said, here, use this. So, you know.
Yeah, it was probably Yahoo.
Powered by Excite.com.
Oh, Lord.
Good old days. But I think it's impossible. Like, obviously, these laws need to be passed, but when you have 500 people in Washington who can pass about 3 laws per year, it's going to be tough for them to do anything this complicated, especially when they're being paid not to.
Yes.
And no, you know what one of the worst parts is? Nobody who can actually get anything done wants to run for government anymore.
Why would they? People want to do things.
I know, no, it's sad, but there was a research study done a little while ago. I saw it a little bit about it, and basically what the study showed was that people don't want to run for government because they see it as some place where nothing gets done.
It's
Yeah,
accurate.
this is why we need some technology people to finally start getting elected, because they'd be proactive on these issues.
Or we'd be
Okay.
taking the people who do get stuff done and putting them in a position where nothing gets done.
Yeah, but if we get enough of them, then maybe things will get done.
Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce the formation of an exploratory committee for my bid for the United States Senate.
Oh my
You are
god,
not
I
the
need
type-
to move to another country now.
What do you mean? You're on my exploratory committee. You can't leave.
Ah,
It's going to be a very short-lived committee.
You are the only one in this group that has any experience doing political work.
yes, that's true. And my response to you running for office is me fleeing the country. Does that tell you anything?
Not in front of all the viewers. Now they're going to know I'm a terrible choice.
They've been watching long enough, haven't they?
Mm.
Now, as part of the results of all this net neutrality stuff, we're starting to see the ISPs come up with their new plans for the internet, and one of them is that Comcast, who's been testing out data caps on customers in various markets around the country, is talking about in 5 years having data caps of around 500 gigs for all of their customers nationwide. And by then, Nathan, that'll almost assuredly include you and me, since we all know the FCC is going to approve the merger with Time Warner Cable.
What? I thought they were going to really look into that and make
Oh, yeah, totally.
determination.
This is a terrible idea. Before they worry about cutting us off on how much data we use, they should worry about getting us all our data when we're supposed to be getting it.
I say at this point, let all the companies merge because they're so horribly incompetent that it'll only expose their problems more.
Yeah, we need a different system. I think the last mile needs to be handled completely differently. Someone, maybe the municipality or the state, putting in the last mile cabling so that we have a decent infrastructure, and we pay ISPs for connecting us to the larger network.
I'm thinking maybe the deregulation of the electricity market would work for here.
Sort of, but I mean, have you been in New York during the summer? We actually need someone in charge of the infrastructure who's going to build the infrastructure. If we end up with a situation where, Con Edison gives us brownouts in certain parts of New York every single summer because they didn't put in enough infrastructure, that won't be good for the internet either.
Yeah, well, but also I think part of the point is now there are companies that can compete with Con Ed to put the infrastructure in.
No, they can compete to provide the power. Only Con Ed can provide the infrastructure, though.
It was my understanding that when they deregulated the market, they gave everyone a choice. You can either do infrastructure or you can do power.
Yeah, no, you understood wrong.
Well, boom.
That was the choice they gave Con Ed, and Con Ed chose the infrastructure. Then everyone else gets to compete for supplying the power.
And who's making sure regulating Con Ed to make sure that they have to do their job?
They're a regulated monopoly, and it's not working properly, as often happens with regulated monopolies.
You mean LIPO wasn't a good idea?
Oh yeah, LIPA. That worked out wonderfully. And Local before it, that was also really excellent.
Yeah. I hear. But I think
These are very, very local jokes. That was the Long Island Power Authority and the Long Island Lighting Company that preceded it before it went out of business.
Let me just give you guys, for those people who don't know, this is how bad LIPO was. During the worst disaster to hit Long Island probably ever, but certainly in my lifetime, Hurricane Superstorm Sandy, when there were people who literally were living in wrecks of houses with no power, with children or elderly with illnesses that required electricity to run machinery to keep them alive.
And don't forget the sewage backed up into the houses.
Oh, and sewage had backed up. People were getting sick from that. That's right. Con Ed actually got one of the things they did right. They got on the problems they were dealing with very early, and they weren't terribly as badly affected as LIPO was by the superstorm. But they got their stuff under control and got it straight pretty quickly. And so they sent extra workers to Long Island to assist LIPA. And LIPA instructed these Con Ed people that they, who were certified the same way any LIPA employee is, were not allowed to do any work without LIPA employees with them. And so for every one Con Ed guy they sent out to do things like hook up a house, they sent a LIPA guy with them, which only kept the manpower problem that LIPA was complaining about exactly the same. And in situations where Con Ed guys who felt bad for people who needed power went ahead and hooked it up anyway after the LIPA guy walked away because I'm here and I have all my tools and the power's coming to the street, I just got to plug your house back in, they got reprimanded and in some cases sent back to Con Ed saying we don't want them.
Yeah. So regulated monopoly is not a great option either.
No, but I think deregulating the ISP market right now would at least be a step in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. Deregulating it, I think, would be wonderful. I think
that's what I said originally.
Yes. Now, the problem is...
One question. Does this mean that we're looking at almost the AOL model?
I mean the AOL model. I don't know.
AOL was providing service on someone else's lines. You had your telephone company, and then AOL came in and supplied service to you.
How about this? A lot of cities, especially a lot of cities and towns, especially the smarter ones, are starting to put their own infrastructure in that they can control.
Yeah.
It's like some cities that are starting to provide internet for their citizens. Well, what if we said, fine, the city puts in, when they're going to put in the power out, power wiring, everything as it is, let them run the cabling, and we'll just pay for the ISPs to actually give us a connection.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we're hoping to end up, as long as we make sure our municipalities keep providing us with decent service. Because if they don't put in good enough lines, we're in just as bad a situation as...
Have them everybody put in fiber. National fiber.
National fiber would be great, until we need something faster than fiber. The big problem...
There is nothing faster than fiber. Stop it.
Not yet. But the big problem we run into with these things, the reason the U.S.'s bandwidth is so bad compared to most industrialized countries is because we got it first. And no city wants to tear up their streets every 3 years putting in new infrastructure. They want to dig once, put in whatever...
Are you kidding me? I used to live in New York City. I used to live in... Unfortunately, I have to say used to. Alas.
New Jersey.
Shut up. I used to live in New York City. They used to tear up the streets to deal with pipes and electrical wiring constantly.
Yeah, but they do that all the time when they have to. They're not, like, randomly replacing the entire piping of New York.
No, but in 3 years, I don't think we're going to be, oh, God, we need to get past fiber. Okay? The reason we have such a bad infrastructure is because we got it first, and better stuff's come out in the last 20 years.
Yeah,
Coax has been out there for a while.
Right, but stuff it's not like in the last 20 years they haven't done this. They did this for telephones decades ago, and then they redid it just a few years ago for cable. Or no, they did it for cable like 30 years ago, but cable had to increase the amount of lines they had in the ground for internet, and then they want to do it again now for fiber, just like 10 years later. So, and it's accelerating. Let's say we take the next step 10 years from now. No city wants to tear up their streets every 10 years. And it's not like it's one block. They have to tear up every street in the city to get it done.
And it's clearly absurd to try to run the same infrastructure over and over again for upgrades. I think wireless is going to have to be the only way for this to work, which is why the real goal should be to get a wireless network up that can handle unlimited bandwidth.
Yeah, but that's never going to happen. That's literally impossible. You just have frequency constraints. There is no way to send as much information as we would want to as radio spectrum. It just can't happen. There isn't enough of it. Verizon just doubled the amount of spectrum they have dedicated to LTE so they can get all the way to 20 megabits a second. And they own more spectrum than anybody else.
Yeah, but what about a plan where you have to only wire parts of the city? You do wireless. So let's say in my home or my business I'm using wireless, but the city has major hubs, so they have to replace the fiber when something better comes out. But it's just to each hub, and the hub has wireless and has to cover a much smaller area, so you can get more power and a stronger signal.
It's not an area constraint; it's a spectrum constraint. The cellular towers we have right now are not covering huge areas. There's just a lot of them spread throughout the city.
I understand.
If too many people are doing too much on one tower at a time, that tower ends up bandwidth limited, and you can't squeeze through enough information.
But do we know what the theoretical limits are of wireless spectrum?
We have a pretty good idea, yeah. And it's nowhere near the levels we want. We're not going to get...
But you're talking about
wireless.
You're talking about 3G or 4G. I'm talking about using Wi-Fi.
It doesn't matter what type of spectrum you're using. It's all radio, and there's only so many packets you can send over one frequency of radio. And there's just a limited amount of spectrum that can be used for radio. Mm-hmm. There are physical limitations we're dealing with here. Fiber is a much, much better option for us, but I think the best option long-term for our infrastructure is the same thing that's the right way to do it when you're building a house, conduit. The plan that a lot of people talk about is called Dig Once, where instead of tearing up the city streets every 10 years or whatever it is, we tear up the city streets now and put in something that allows for running more cable without tearing up the streets again. Either a big enough tunnel that you can do work in the tunnel, or something that opens at street level so we can get back into it without, breaking through pavement.
So you're saying like electrical you're talking like electrical manhole covers. You just want to put them closer together so that you don't have to rip up the street to run more cable. You can go to the cable, go to the manhole, cut the cable, and run a new set from there, from the last one to this one.
Exactly, something like that. That's the way we have to build our infrastructure, because this is something that actually is going to need to get changed going forward.
Okay, good. Now we found the first talking point for my campaign.
Yes, we need to find a politician who can talk about change.
No, but we got a specific change.
Dig once. That's the kind of message America can get behind.
Yes, deregulation of the ISP market and dig once.
And
That's two points.
Network neutrality, a term that nobody can understand without a 10-minute explanation. By the way, if you want a really excellent 10-minute explanation of what network neutrality is, look up the Vihart video on the subject, and also, what was the other one I saw? Oh, CP Gray. Both did really excellent stories on videos on net neutrality.
Wait, are you seriously advertising for other people's podcasts on our podcast?
No, they're just 10-minute YouTube videos. They're not podcasts. It's okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
think what he's saying is that even though we've dedicated literally hours to this subject, people who've been watching the show probably still don't have much of an understanding of what the hell we're talking about.
Yes, that's very true. And the best ways to describe net neutrality are with really good analogies, and both those videos have really good analogies.
I like the on-ramp to a highway analogy. I thought it made sense.
Yes, but it's way more complex than that. Vihard actually uses that analogy, but it's way more complex than that.
And so's your face.
Okay, so next super complicated story I really wanted to talk about tonight is Amazon. Amazon, it seems, is in a fight with a few major publishers, and
Amazon is a river in South America.
yeah, exactly.
Peoples in ancient Greece.
The fourth largest publisher in the United States is called Hachette, I think it's pronounced, and they are currently their books are unavailable on Amazon.com because they're in a fight over I think the rumor is ebook rights and pricing. And so Amazon first listed their books as delayed for 2-3 weeks, and now is just not making them available for sale at all. So Amazon has finally started exhibiting the monopoly behaviors that a lot of people in the publishing industry were afraid they were going to start exhibiting eventually.
Oops.
Yeah. Amazon used to be the place you went to prove that you had some clout when you fought with Barnes & Noble and Borders to get your stuff in their stores. Now Borders is dead and Barnes & Noble is dying, and Amazon is basically paper book publishing. And they're throwing their weight around in arguably monopolistic ways.
What is the dispute over?
The dispute seems to be over how much Amazon charges for ebooks, as always, and what books Amazon is going to get the rights to and exclusivity stuff. A lot of it is rumors. We don't know exactly what Amazon wants, but we do know it's an ebook-related dispute. And as a result, they are blocking paper book sales. Now, I've been thinking about this the last few days. Call me crazy, but wouldn't it make sense for the big publishers to get together and create a online bookstore where you could just buy any book and anyone could list that book with the publishers?
You mean like Hulu?
I was about to say that.
Yeah. Like, wouldn't that make perfect sense? Forget the agency model they were trying to do. Let them just sell directly and they can make whatever profit margin they want and price any way they want.
Yeah, but every other major online bookstore has failed to compete with Amazon.
Yeah, because every other major online bookstore has been trying to sell books through physical stores. Amazon built their business on economies of scale, which these book publishers have already because they have all the books, and limiting their warehousing costs, which these guys don't have to worry about. They're warehousing these books anyway.
Yeah, but they don't have the efficiency to drive down costs like Amazon has. They don't have any of the infrastructure or any of the warehousing tech and experience that Amazon has. They wouldn't be able to make the same profit on their own books that Amazon does.
Yeah, but they could also not sell to Amazon and cut Amazon out of the market.
Then that would be collusion and a monopoly, and then they would be the ones getting sued.
Yes, they don't have to stop selling to Amazon, though. They could just open their own store alongside Amazon.
I think they'd fail miserably, though.
I think they'd probably lose money on it at the beginning. That's not necessarily the same thing as failing. I think this is something they need to invest in, and probably something they should have invested in a long time ago.
Agreed. It just might be a little bit too late for them to make a dent. I mean, Amazon, at this point, selling books is just a very small part of their business.
Right.
Right, which means that if Amazon loses control of that, it's not the end of the world for Amazon. But if the book publishers lose control of it, it could be the end of the world for them. You know, they don't have a lot of leverage on Amazon right now. This would be a way for them to get some leverage back. If Amazon cares about its book business, competing against its book business is the way to get somewhere.
They might as well try it.
Yeah, they can't be in a worse position than they're in right now. You know, and the other thing to remember is ebooks the publishers want that handled a certain way, the only way to guarantee it gets handled right is to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not usually a fan of media providers doing things the way they want to do it and not going through the middlemen that I like, but it seems crazy to me that these guys aren't trying it at least. You know, cable television doesn't seem to have any qualms about doing everything it can to preserve its own business model. Why are the book publishers just giving up?
I think they're such an old school business that they probably resisted technology a lot, and whereas Amazon, of course, is a technology first business, so this was always easy for them. While the book publishers sat back, thought about bookstores, thought about the physical world, and by the time it made sense for them to make this exact move, Amazon already owned 95% of the market.
That's too bad, really.
The other thing is, why can't manufacturers set their own prices with things?
They can. They just can't set the price Amazon charges.
Yeah, what right does anyone have to tell a store what the store can charge for the things it's already bought from them? It's a law saying that if you buy something, you can resell it at whatever price you want. Now, you can try to make a contract saying that they have to sell at a different price, but you have to convince the other party to sign that contract. Otherwise, first sale doctrine says sell it for whatever the hell you want.
Right, so they have to sign a contract that says you sell it for what our list price is, or you can't sell it.
And that's the dispute we're probably looking at right here. Amazon is saying, well, yeah, we're never going to sign that contract. We don't sign it with anyone. We sell stuff at whatever price we want to sell it at. And Amazon's absolutely right, because Amazon sets these prices with an algorithm designed to make the most amount of money. It is to sell the most books so that everyone makes the most amount of money. And the idea that anyone should be fighting this is kind of absurd. Amazon's not trying to sell less things and make less money.
Yeah, but what Amazon is trying to do, though, is lower the price of the books so that they can sell more, and then get publishers to lower the price they sell it to Amazon at so that they can earn a bigger profit. You know, Amazon doesn't really care about the book publishers themselves, and the publishers don't want to take a hit just because Amazon wants to lower the price. What Amazon's been very successful at doing is the same thing Walmart was very successful at doing. They sell low, they devalue the product, and then they go back to the source and say, well, your product doesn't have the same value it had before. We don't want to pay as much for it.
In a small industry like book publishing, I don't see why they can't just say, well, you know, this is what we're selling it at. Sorry.
Well, it's essentially what they did.
Yeah. We'll see who blinks first.
Look, I'll tell you, we're at work by me. We're actually having a similar issue to this, believe it or not. Not Amazon themselves, but a seller on Amazon who's selling our product, not just at lower than anybody else, including us, at lower than what it costs us to produce it, in some cases. Like, there's no way whoever this person is can be making money on this. In most cases, they're selling it for lower than we've sold it to anybody ever, and in some cases, lower than it costs us to make. And we're trying, and it's affecting our business on Amazon, because we also sell on Amazon. And it's actually, and we get complaints from major chain stores saying you've got somebody selling it this low. This is a problem by us because it's affecting their business. You know, you go to a Burlington and you see the product, but you saw it on Amazon for half the price, a quarter, in some cases a quarter of the price. And you're like, why would I buy it at Burlington or pick another store that might sell these products?
This is why physical stores are going away. But you know, that guy.
No, but this is a situation where somebody who's selling it is severe loss.
That guy probably got a source of someone else's overstocks, and he got it dirt cheap, and he's probably making a profit despite selling it for less than anyone else.
It's a common tactic by Amazon resellers because it's a tactic that Amazon itself has on duplication. But I gotta ask, if they're selling the product for less than it costs you to produce it, why don't you just buy it?
You know what? It's a good question.
That would actually be a really good tactic. Buy up all this guy's stocks and resell them again.
Problem is, I can't imagine what he's getting. He's been selling these things on Amazon for months. We've been having going to Amazon to get him to stop, which of course they say no.
Of course they say no. Why should they have to take this guy out of their store just because he's selling your product?
Well, because he's not an authorized seller.
Yeah, but there's no law that says you have to be authorized to resell a product. In fact, there's a law that says you can't require people to be authorized.
Yeah. And I've seen this tactic before because one of the biggest things you need as a reseller on Amazon is to have a good rating. You need good store ratings, and you need a good sales history. So if you can sell a bunch of products at cost or at a loss, you build that up, and then all of a sudden you can start selling more expensive items at a very nice profit.
Maybe that's what this person is doing. We're not sure. But he's been selling it for too long to be just reselling, somebody else's leftovers that he got his hands on.
I don't know. He sells it for super cheap, and so other people don't sell as much, and they have overstocks, and they sell their overstocks really cheap. And he buys it all up and keeps selling, and then that results in more people not being able to sell the product and having overstocks.
That would be an interesting model, except that we communicate with all of our customers.
Oh, okay.
So we know that nobody's sitting around. They call and complain when they can't sell goods.
Got it.
So I don't think that's possible. I think it's somebody who's buying it up and just selling it possibly to build up a good rating so they can turn around and...
Could be. All right, so for the last couple of weeks, there's been rumors floating around that Beats Audio was about to be bought by Apple. First, there was a rumor, then there was a video by someone talking about Dr. Dre being the first hip-hop billionaire. Then the video was pulled down, and not a word was said for weeks, as the tech world speculated. Then there were rumors that the sale was delayed, or maybe not happening, or maybe Apple was upset about that video, or who knows what. Today the sale closed, and the rumors were almost exactly right. The rumor was $3.2 billion for Beats. It ended up being $3 billion.
I am so happy to hear this news because I don't like Apple, and I like to see them make poor decisions.
So Nathan, tell us why you think it's a poor decision, because there's been a lot of debate on this subject.
It's mostly...
and hold the mic closer to your face, because it's getting very hard to hear you.
Basically, it's a poor decision because Beats has no value, and they paid $3 billion for nothing.
See, I don't know about that. $1 billion in annual revenue is a value, especially since it's highly profitable revenue.
It's highly profitable revenue, but honestly, they're not really selling a product that has any value either. They're selling $20 headphones for $150, which is an incredible skill that Apple also has. But because it's not a product that's particularly unique or particularly special, it's a fashion fad. So if they can't maintain this for at least 3 to 4 more years, it's going to be a total loss for Apple.
Right, but if they can maintain it for 3 years, they broke even. And that's if they get nothing else out of it. The fact is, while Beats may not be a particularly great product, they do represent the majority of the $100 plus headphone market in this country. Most people.
Yeah, but if I may interject, they're selling. Beats is selling a name that is associated with the said hip hop artist we mentioned before, who pushed these and was at the helm of this. Yes. He's gone now. They just bought it from him.
No, he's getting a position at Apple, and so is Iovine, his other person in the music industry at Beats. The two of them will be working at Apple now.
There's a certain obsession in Silicon Valley with hiring PhDs. I think they might have just gotten confused by the doctor and Dr. Dre and made a terrible choice.
Whatever else you may want to say about Beats, the fact is, Dre and Ivan built that business off of their reputation in the music industry, off of the idea that they have a knowledge of what good music sounds like, and they've put their reputation behind these headphones, and for whatever reason, people believe them.
Yeah, but I still stand by by what I was trying to say. This is not a in the sales world. There's two kinds in the sales of goods. There's two kinds of sales. Really. There's statistic sales. You come in with the numbers and you make a presentation based on what sells in what market and whatever. And then there's the personality sales. You get a guy who goes in, he schmoozes up, and he pushes and he convinces and he cajoles or whatever and gets the buyer to purchase product,
Right.
right? And that translates even down to other markets and to sales to customers. Okay, but Beats by Dr. Dre is really the second kind. It's a personality sale, not a math sale.
Like
Absolutely.
all Apple products.
Huh?
Like all Apple products.
Yeah, but it's not the same market as all Apple products. And Apple's going to want to rebrand it to fit with the rest of their branding. They're not going to want to own this product that maintains its original look that is completely different from the rest of Apple products.
I don't think you're right about that. Apple's ads over the last few years, if you look at them, the white earbuds have been replaced largely by Beats headphones. And if you walk into an Apple store, they sell Beats headphones. This is absolutely their market.
No, this I understand, but they're going to want to rebrand the product to
I don't know
fit
that
more
you're
the
right
Apple
about
look.
that. You don't buy Beats by Dre, which has become an iconic fashion brand over the last few years, so you can rebrand it and lose the iconic fashion.
No, you shouldn't buy it for that purpose. But Apple is obsessed with everything fitting the Apple model and the Apple look. They may want to not change it completely. They may want it to just modify it a little so it still stands out as the Beats by Dr. Dre with just a little bit of, it's the Apple Beats by Dr. Dre.
Okay, but what you just told us is
it's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
What you just told us, though, is that this purchase was a bad idea by Apple because Apple will do the wrong thing with it.
Because I think Apple will do the wrong thing. Correct.
Right. But what if they do the right thing with it? Maybe they keep the Beats by Dre brand.
I'm not saying. Let me rephrase. I'm not saying it's going to be a good choice in any circumstance. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at. Not really a maven on their business model and their revenue stream. But
it's the same one as Apple. They make a ton of money selling a mediocre product at an outrageous markup.
So then maybe it was a good idea. If they do the right thing, then it might be a good idea for them. Yeah. That being said, I'm afraid that going to pattern on Apple's previous behavior, they're not going to do the right thing. They're going to want to do stuff that will affect a product they're trying to sell. They're trying to sell a product that sells because it looks like this. It's like saying, I bought up, Air Jordans so that I can make them look like Nikes. Well, nobody's going to buy Air Jordans that look like Nikes. They want Air Jordans to be Air Jordans that say Air Jordan on them. And
I think we should be very clear here. There is no past Apple history on this subject. This is the largest sale in Apple's history by a very wide margin. And
true.
It is the only brand they have ever bought that was recognizable on its own. The closest on both counts was Next when they basically Apple hired Steve Jobs back in the late 90s, and that was less than a sixth of the amount of money, and Next was not a recognizable brand at all. It was only recognizable to Apple fanboys who knew Steve Jobs was at Next. So there is no Apple history on this subject.
No, there is. But you are correct. We're not arguing on the same point. I was not talking about their history when purchasing giant other companies for lots of money. I'm talking about their history with every product they've ever released or purchased or done anything with. This is why I'm saying I'm not sure if this was a product like a company like Next, then I would say clearly they're going to do the wrong thing. I'm saying if they do the wrong thing, which I believe. But based on their previous behavior.
Based on their history. There's no history to base this on.
I'm basing on their history.
They're going to do this wrong.
No. I'm basing their history on the way the company behaves. They have this obsession with not necessarily obsession. It works for them because it makes lots of sales. But they have this obsession with very tight branding. Everything has to be as tightly branded as possible.
So why can't their headphone line stay branded Beats by Dre?
Because they have everything in their entire lineup is branded to a single tiny little spectrum of brand. Okay?
Maybe
the iPads look like big iPhones.
It's time to branch out a little bit.
Yeah,
that may be true.
Stick with us.
You're breaking up, Nathan. It's like your mic is only working every other syllable.
Well, I mean, they've said that their plan is to stick with this, to leverage the Beats brand. It's entirely possible that they'll start making the headphones themselves, but that's a whole separate story.
And
they'll probably
stop creeping.
Yeah.
But my point is not there. You're looking for behavior with this exact same scenario. I'm just talking about their corporate behavior in general points to a certain direction of the way they would respond to things. And
And what I'm saying,
based on that, I'm saying I think they will likely, but not definitely, do the wrong thing. I can't say definitely because this is not like like Google who buys things. Oh, look, it's only $1 billion here, 20 billion there. That's chump change.
Has any company ever made a large acquisition like this and been successful with it? A brand, major cachet that maintained that brand post-acquisition.
What about WhatsApp?
that's too soon to tell. But
Too soon, yeah.
in the tech industry,
I was trying to be funny, actually. Sorry.
in the tech industry, not to my knowledge, but the tech industry is too new for stuff like that. If you look at the car industry, there are car companies that have been bought by GM that maintain their brand. You know, like it's not impossible to maintain a brand just because you have a new owner. And
Yeah, in the car company world, they did that constantly.
yeah,
But at the same time, you're talking
Most
about companies-
brands you've heard of aren't their own companies. They belong to other companies. Most of the brands you think of as this brand or that brand are really just belong to Ford or GM or.
mostly GM. Like
Didn't Jaguar belong to Ford? Didn't Ford buy a Jaguar or something like
I
that?
don't remember.
and that was a terrible acquisition. I can't think of any recent examples. Car companies merging were pretty successful decades ago, but in the last 10, 20 years, every car company merger has been pretty unsuccessful.
Yes, but that's just because the car companies themselves have been pretty unsuccessful in that time frame.
And how much rebranding did these car companies do when they merged?
None at all.
But I think that every industry's track record with cool, well-known fashion plates like Beats has been pretty terrible over the last 10, 20 years. I can't think of any good examples.
Well, I see two ways this playing out well for Apple. Just to take the other side of the coin, because a lot of people have said that they think it's going to end badly. The two ways are, one, let Beats by Dre be Beats by Dre, keep selling it in the Apple Store and make money off of it. And option two is this sale had absolutely nothing to do with the headphone company and everything to do with Apple wanting their own subscription streaming music service. Because Beats has one, and Apple doesn't. And Beats has people with music expertise, and Apple hasn't had that since Steve Jobs died. So this may have been entirely unrelated to consumer electronics.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, now Apple finally has some apps that run on Windows and Windows Phone,
Yeah,
which I'm sure they've been itching
today. That was pretty funny.
I didn't realize Beats. I thought they were just headphones. I didn't even know that. Like I said, I'm not familiar with their entire revenue stream. I didn't realize they also have a subscription music.
So it's tiny, almost irrelevant in that market. I mean, in that market, if you want relevant, the answer is Spotify.
Yeah, but if you put that in the Apple, build it into iOS, it's now part of iTunes.
Exactly. So, you know, Beats started out as Mog. Beats by Dre bought Mog, rebranded it as the Beats Music Service, and they added some own features of theirs that are unique. The basic premise of Beats is that in addition to all the streaming music stuff you get with everyone else, there's also going to be recommended playlists by musicians and artists, which, you know, with the whole Beats brand cachet relying on Dr. Dre knowing what good music should sound like, was a very good fit for them. Now taking that into Apple, you know, this could be the beginning of the iTunes streaming music service. You also have, you know, you put the existing branding plus Apple behind it, put it on the iPhone by default with iTunes, and you have something that could potentially be very compelling. By the way, changes to that service started today already. With the announcement of the sale, they also announced changes to the Beats Music service.
Like what?
The 1 week free trial just got changed to a 2 week free trial, and it used to be $9.99 a month and no discount for paying annually. Now it's $99 a year. Nothing major, but they're already obviously having an effect on the service.
Right.
So I think that may factor very heavily into this purchase.
That's
And
interesting.
that's about their plans for it too.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this as an option. We
Mhm.
talked about we argued about how they might try to rebrand, the Beats by Dr. Dre, and then that would kill the brand. What about the other way? What about Beats by Dr. Dre's got a huge branding name and following? What if you started to fold that into some of the iPhone stuff? Not rebranding the iPhone as the Beats phone or something like that, but taking maybe merging the logos so you get something in between, or adding some features. Don't call it your media player on your iPhone is now your Beats audio player.
You
Well,
know
think
what we
about it
want to
this
see?
way.
iTunes Radio rebranded as iTunes Beats. That's what we're talking about here.
You
That
gotta
could
remember,
be.
Apple's also got the iPod, which is an iconic product that sells hundreds of millions of units, probably still per year, but at the same time is slipping badly. And perhaps this is exactly what Apple needs to. Even if all they do is increase iPod sales by 10 to 20%, that could be a huge move right there.
Beats iPods by Apple, sure. Yeah,
Wow. I mean,
we've talked about it the other way. Why couldn't and that has that's interesting. I don't know if it would help them, but it's an interesting concept.
yeah. I don't
And
think
I,
the future
and
is
I don't think
iPod sales, though.
it would hurt Apple's products as much as I think the other way would hurt the Beats products. I mean, if you rebranded the iPhone the Beats phone, forget it. You're killing a brand. Apple has a brand name, but you could mess with the logo on the Apple a little, the Apple background to look, maybe like a little more B-shaped, or a B with an apple with a little B in it, something like that. Make the bite taken out of it look like a B. You know,
Sure.
you know,
You wouldn't mess with the iPhone, but the iPod is a dead business. You hand that over to Dr. Dre, see what he can do with it.
that's a
You know,
possibility, right?
Yeah.
Or I was going to say services like we're talking about creating the stream service, but services existing on the iPhone and on the iPod and in their ecosystem being rebranded to add the Beats, fold some of the Beats stuff into it. When you add this streaming service in, so you have Beats Tunes, Beats Radio. Why not?
Yeah, and especially since the iTunes name is kind of terrible at this point. Uh, Nathan and I were discussing earlier this week how little we want to install iTunes on our computers.
I refuse. I refuse.
I have such a superiority complex every time one of my coworkers has to use iTunes to get something done. I just laugh and laugh.
Okay,
How
so
much time do we have left? I know we have a bit of a hard stop at some point.
yeah, I want to go for maybe 15 more minutes and then we're out. Let's say the Google self-driving car.
That's
Google's been in
cool.
the news a bunch over the last couple of years that they had among their building a self-driving car. Until now, all they've had is other cars that they added their tech to, and it was just purely for data gathering purposes, perfecting the technology. All of a sudden, this week they unveiled an actual car that was custom built by Google as a self-driving car.
And it only costs $2.5 million.
Yes, and there will be a whopping 100 of them. Now, these are clearly still experimental products. They are not meant for consumers, and they look hilarious.
Sure.
They're about the size of a smart car. They're electric vehicles. There's enough stuff done to the front of the car that the headlights end up looking like a smiley face. I think that's deliberate. I hope that's deliberate because otherwise it's the weirdest looking car I've ever seen. There are 2 seats, no cargo space, no steering wheel, and no brakes. This is true self-driving car. No fallback here. Although supposedly there's a fallback somehow. I don't know how that works without there being a steering wheel and a brake, but apparently there is a fallback according to the article.
Yeah, it's adorable.
That's what you want to say about your car.
Hey, listen.
You know what? I don't care if it looks adorable. I want a self-driving car.
Look at it. Okay, hold on a second. Just look at it. It has a nose and 2 eyes and a mouth.
Yes.
So do I.
It's a happy car.
And you're adorable too.
Oh, thank you.
I
So cute. It's like a little baby unicorn.
want its features, but I want a fully functional car for when I want to drive.
See, I never, ever, ever want to drive, but I do require a trunk.
No, I want to take my car and just add their control features in so that I can use it to drive for me if I want them to.
I always want them to.
No, I like driving.
I want to read my book.
And I'm too much of a control freak to give up the ability to control the car completely.
What's wrong with not controlling the car? I assume we've all watched that Silicon Valley episode. That worked out so well.
Yes, that's right. Man trapped alone on an oil rig in the middle of the ocean. After spending 3 weeks trapped in a cargo container.
Oi! Spoilers! Spoilers!
Yeah, Silicon Valley doesn't get spoiler warnings. I'm sorry, there are no surprises in this show. It's just not that kind of show.
Ouch.
Spoiler warnings.
I,
You want the big surprise?
Surprises. It's more misogynistic than I expect.
You want the big surprise from this show? The character that people found the most entertaining for the most part, the billionaire who's funding everything for Pied Piper, the actor died after 4 episodes. That's the most surprising thing about the show.
oh, God.
He's still not dead on the show. They just keep making excuses for why he's not in the scene.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
They'll probably just have him die in the show.
Because they hadn't written a script in which he died, and they weren't going to go there, I guess.
Hey.
Yeah, that show I don't think is going to last, but I'm enjoying it while it's there.
Yeah, me too.
Now, who wants a Surface Pro 3?
Oh, I want 2.
You want 2? Well, they're going to cost you because there is no RT version and therefore no cheap version of the latest version of the Surface.
Oh, wait, you mean they finally decided, Windows finally decided that the RT is a dead line?
Yeah, it was very weird. At the announcement event, every rumor under the sun expected this to be a Surface Mini event, and they were going to come out with an 8-inch version of the Surface. It was probably going to be running RT, and Microsoft was going to get serious about the small tablet market and have something in that $200 to $300 price range that everyone's seriously competing in now. And it just never appeared. There
Windows
was no
doesn't work that way. I'm sorry.
I think Microsoft realizes that its OEMs are handling the cheap tablet market at this point pretty well. You can get a $180 RT tablet. They're really easy to get. So Microsoft's trying to do something more interesting and nicer.
I agree. It's surprising after 2 generations where they had a low-end model, all of a sudden the Surface Pro ranges from $800 to $2,000, and there isn't a low-end model of this. It's a big change for them.
Yeah. What is going to happen to the existing form factors?
They'll still be there. You know, Microsoft doesn't need to produce a next thing that you already own.
The original Surface Pro, though, that was a lot more expensive than this is.
Not a lot more. It was $1,000 for the Surface Pro originally, and same with the second generation. This one starts a little cheaper, but
Starts at
much more
$800.
flexible options to it, so it also goes way more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Did they drop the price of the Surface too?
I haven't even looked. So few people were buying the Surface 2, I don't think it was relevant. What do you think about switching to the 3:2 aspect ratio on the Surface, though?
Very weird.
Yeah, I agree. The only other device that's been in 3:2 aspect ratio that I've ever seen was the Chromebook Pixel, which...
Another very fancy, very expensive device.
Yes, that nobody bought.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the free ones they gave away were the only ones that were ever given out.
So that's the weird thing. There's a bunch of tech journalists that worked on Chromebooks and talk about how they spent $1,400 and love it. It's weird.
Yeah, because they got their editors to pay for it.
Maybe. And the fact is they're tech journalists whose companies work on Google Drive, and so this is actually a useful product for them.
So the Surface Pro 2 32 gig is $450, and the 64 gig is $549.
So that's a pretty steep discount.
And the 64 gig with LTE is $679.
Yeah, so they just ripped $500 out of the price of that thing.
Yep.
I think they're selling at a loss now.
Is that a good thing?
Uh,
Why did nobody buy the Pro 2?
because it wasn't significantly different from the Pro 1, which wasn't a particularly good product.
If you did the research into Windows tablets when trying to buy one, and I did because I did get a Windows tablet, and I did the research, it was pretty clear that other than the fact that the Surface tablets were better designed, they weren't your best option for the price. Without a doubt, you could get a better tablet for the price, or you could get a tablet just as good at a cheaper price from any other manufacturer. So the only people who bought it were the people who strictly wanted one that looked better and had a really interesting build quality.
I have to say, I was very impressed by the build quality of every Surface model so far. They look great. They're very solid. It's all very impressive. It's just too expensive for what you're getting out of it as a computer to be worth it. You basically get the same price for a laptop that does the exact same thing, and then have to pay $150 extra for the keyboard.
Yeah. I like that they've taken a page out of Samsung's book and added a pen to the Pro 3.
Yes, that was a very good move. People are calling this the best OneNote device ever created.
No, I think it's a good idea. I like it. I use Samsung devices, and I like the pen interface, not to replace, but to supplement.
Well, haven't all Surface tablets had pen input?
The Surface Pros have all had it.
Yeah.
But people are a lot more impressed by this one. The pen itself is very well designed and comfortable and balanced, and also there's a click button on it that when you press it, launches OneNote even if the tablet is off.
Interesting.
Microsoft was leaning very heavily on this as a device you write on, as a slate. The handwriting recognition in OneNote has apparently gotten very good. The fact that it's so light compared to a laptop is nice, but it's quite heavy for a tablet. I love the new kickstand. The fact that it doesn't snap into positions anymore. You just have one position that's open enough to keep the thing up, and then it'll go to any angle beyond that.
Yeah, that's definitely good.
It might actually be usable on your lap finally.
Oh wow! When at full extension, it goes almost. How many degrees is that? 270 degrees. It looks like. That's fully open.
Degrees would mean the kickstand's in front, so that's not it.
I did not mean 270 degrees. I meant.
That would be interesting.
Oh Lord, I need sleep.
I think it's like 170 degrees, something like that.
No.
Which makes sense with a screen that big. You want to be able to.
I was going to say I meant 135 degrees. I was thinking 45 degrees off of a full. Maybe not. Maybe it's more like 160.
It goes pretty far. So it's a step in the right direction. I like the fact that it finally has the full range of options. You can get this with an i3, i5, or i7 processor. You can get it with anything from, I think 128 to 512 gig SSD, something like that.
It comes in the following options. It comes in 64 gig i3, 128 gig i5, 256 gig i5, 256 gig i7, and 512 gig i7.
Oh, so I got it right. I just missed the 64 gig.
And 256 i7 is like $1,500.
Yeah, and 512 is almost $2,000, right?
I believe so, yeah.
What about the range of battery lives? Because my biggest issue with the i7 tablets that all came out were that the battery life was just not worth it.
Yeah, and battery life, I mean, Microsoft went to great lengths to compare themselves to the MacBook Air during this presentation. And the big selling point on the MacBook Air is that 12-hour battery life. Microsoft's talking about 9 hours, and that's probably going to be for one of the more battery-efficient models. So I think they got killed on that one.
No, but if you can get 9 hours with an i3, it's a huge improvement over i7s that we're getting at 4.
That is true, but I don't want to run on an i3 day to day. I'd much rather have at least an i5.
I can tell you, running on an Atom tablet with a 9-hour battery,
Oh,
9-hour battery is worth more than the better speed.
you just said Atom, and it caused me physical pain.
I love my tablet.
I know you love your tablet. I don't understand how you love your tablet.
It does
He's
everything.
a sadist. He's a masochist. He's a
I work with
masochist.
Atom devices, and I hate them all. I work with i3 devices from our cheapest customers, and it's painful to set them up because everything is so slow. i5 is a very comfortable place to work. I don't think people need i7, but anything lower than that, just it's not worth the money you're saving.
By the way, the 512 i7,
Mm-hmm.
$1,949.
Yes, and they still don't have an LTE version.
Who? I don't get tablets with connectivity. I don't see the point.
If you're
Lose battery life.
if you're selling business-focused tablets, it makes a lot of sense. I have plenty of clients that have LTE dongles or Wi-Fi hotspots that they carry around with them all the time to get their laptops online, and they use them constantly. I think if you're selling a tablet for business customers, having an LTE model makes perfect sense, especially since you can now put in LTE radios that cover all the carriers, and it's very easy to just...
So if that's the case, they should just bring this the high-end number up. Instead of 1949, just make it 2,000 even.
You know what? I think they should be, if you're talking about this as a pro tablet, they should be putting LTE into every single one of them, and don't have a markup from it. Leave the price as is, spend the $5 on an LTE chipset, and you're done.
That's definitely a good idea, yeah.
All right. We are going to call this our hard break. So, guys, where can we find you? Eitan.
Google Plus and Facebook. Yeah, Facebook.
Where we will find you liking all sorts of oddly disturbing things.
It's true. It's true. On Facebook, it's my wife. She secretly uses my name.
And Nathan, how about you?
But she's a lovely lady, so you should totally say hi to her.
You can find me at Nathan Weinberg on Twitter and at Techcitement, of course. And I will be at the Internet Retailer Conference in 2 weeks in Chicago. So look me up there.
Nice.
You're a bad person.
You can find me on Twitter at Yohani and on Google Plus as Plus Yoni Gross. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave a review if you enjoyed it. You can also subscribe via RSS at shoutengine.com/techcitementpodcast.xml. We'll be back next week bringing you what's exciting in tech. See you next time. Oh, a double salute now. I love it.